Welcome back to another episode of the Casey Campbell podcast. Casey Campbell with you, of course. And you know me, I always like to meet new people, and I know it's always fun. So here we are. We have a new person on here. This is Ben Schneider, of course, from the Grid Network podcast. Of course, also contributes to the Last Car site. Of course, that is Brock Beard's site of where they cover the last place finisher. Why not? How's it going, buddy?
It's going pretty well. Thanks for having me. I've followed your work for a long time, and I'm excited to finally be on the show myself.
Yeah, that's exciting. So you're coming off actually, I know it's been a few weeks, but you're coming off a big West Coast trip and all that. And how was that? How exciting was that? You got to do some stuff for your podcast, the Grid Network, and then got to do some stuff for Nascar.
Yeah, no, it was fantastic. So, I live in Delaware. I think most people who follow me are aware of that by now, but in case you're not aware of that, it's definitely not, a short trip by any stretch of the imagination, but it worked out very nicely with the schedule because Joe Samniego, who runs Grid Network, is based just outside of Portland. And Brock, of course, is based in Northern California, goes to Sonoma every year. So I thought to myself, I'm working for both of these outlets now. Is there a way I could make a trip out to the West Coast and hit up both of their home tracks? Because I knew Joe was going to be at Portland covering that race. And obviously Brock is always at Sonoma. And it worked out very well. I ended up flying from Philadelphia to Minneapolis and then Minneapolis to Portland. I was supposed to fly direct from Newark, New Jersey to Portland, but my United Airlines flight got canceled the morning I was supposed to leave. So that was kind of a hasty rescheduling that I had to go through, but it ended up working out. So I landed in Portland on Thursday night. We went to a welcome party where some of the West Series drivers and Xfinity drivers were. Covered the Portland races on Friday and Saturday. And then Sunday, my friend Ethan Smith, who's a photographer, takes a lot of photography for some of the West Series teams. He drove me down from Oregon to his place in Fairfield, California, and ended up staying with him for a little more than a week. And while I was out there, got to go with him to Sonoma and get to meet Brock in person and cover the West race, the truck race, and the Cup race there. So it was a busy 2 weeks. And then I hopped on a flight from San Francisco back to Philadelphia and then came back home to Delaware. So, it was a great experience. And I'm hopeful that the schedules can align like that in the future so I can go do it again.
Yeah, for sure. For people that don't know about you, kind of fill us in and, just to give us a little bit of your background and how you got into all this.
Oh, wow. Where to begin? I guess, it's funny because I have a lot of friends and that I've met online and everything, and they tend to vary in age, but I feel like most of us got into the sport around the 2006, 2007 time. And, I'm the same way. I went to go see the Pixar movie Cars. My birthday is actually coming up in 2 days, and, Pixar's films used to at least always come out, at the end of June or beginning of July. So right around my birthday. So I ended up going to see this Cars movie in 2006 and, fell in love with it and ended up finding out a few months later that it's actually based on a real sport. So October of that year, I discovered I was flipping through my grandmother's TV guide and I saw NASCAR racing on NBC. I turned on the 2006 UAW Ford 500. I did a whole video on it on my YouTube channel, actually, if you want to go check that out. So I think I picked a very good first race. Maybe not a good first race if you're a Dale Jr. fan, which I was at the time because he was pretty much the only driver I knew because he had a cameo in the Cars movie. Yeah. And, was leading most of that race and then ended up getting turned inadvertently by Brian Vickers, and Jimmy Johnson got caught up in that as well. But that was my first exposure to the Cup Series. And, by 2007, I was following along full time. I also watched the Indy 500 that year. So that was my introduction to IndyCar racing. And I would say by the 2008 season, fully immersed in that as well. My biggest regret is that it took me a little longer to get into Formula One because I've really fallen in love with that the last few years. And it gives me great pride that I can say I was into it before the whole Drive to Survive series exploded and everything. But I didn't get into that until 2014 when I watched the Canadian Grand Prix. And again, very good first race if you're going to pick a first race to watch, because that was an epic finish between Daniel Ricciardo and Nico Rosberg there, in an era that Mercedes were winning pretty much every race that year. So now I'm fully immersed in all three of those series, and I also watch the IMSA sports car stuff when I can, and obviously Grid Network covers a whole bunch of different racing series that don't get as much coverage here in the States. So, tried to pick up a little bit of those as well. But that's pretty much how I became a race fan. And I guess in terms of doing podcasts and writing and everything, writing has always been something that I've enjoyed. It's funny because my dad has a PhD in physics. My mother's a physics teacher. And, I end up wanting to go into journalism and media in a completely different field. But, it's not that I like hate mathematics and science. It's just that I have a much bigger passion for reading and writing and putting, the pen to paper, if you will. So I went to college thinking that I wanted to be a journalist, and I still might. It's still something that I think is on the table. But, I took a lot of different communications classes and really got to diversify my portfolio in terms of my skill set. And it's given me a whole different bunch of options in terms of what I feel like I can do and do within the sport. And I'm happy to, have these opportunities now with Nascar and the Grid Network. And, I guess that's kind of brought me to where we are today.
Absolutely. So you look around, and I know you've, if you follow Ben on Twitter, he's known for saying certain things that might make people angry. Certain people. I know you have I know one of the things I've learned about NASCAR fans during my time of being a fan and really just and covering the sport for the last 6 years is that NASCAR fans have a lot of things that they want, or someone's like, yeah, this is cool. Yeah, this is no, let's never do this again. Where's like your thing? It's like, what's one thing you want to see? And like one thing is like, we used to do this. I want to see it maybe brought back. And then what's something that's like, oh, we never need to do this again?
There's a lot of things. I think if you follow me, you probably are aware of some of them. Some people would probably call me a traditionalist, or a purist, I guess is the word that they might like to use instead. But I do think, I don't think it's a coincidence that the sport's ratings and attendance declined as the sport put more of an emphasis on things like playoffs and overtime and entertainment gimmicks like that. I think I certainly would prefer to see the champion decided by a full season points tally rather than a playoff system where you have constant resets. And, now you have stage racing and playoff points. So you have like multiple point systems within a point system. And I feel like, if you're trying to introduce, the sport to a new fan, it's much easier to say, well, the winner gets the most points all the way down incrementally to last place. And you tally up all the points at the end of the year, and whoever has the most points at the end of the season, they're the champions. And that's how it's done in virtually every other form of motorsports across the world. Even if you have the 10 race chase format, I feel like you can tell people that there's one hard reset between the top 10 or top 12 or whatever, and then it's a sprint to the finish from there. I'm not necessarily a fan of that, but I will certainly take that if NASCAR wanted to go back to that over the elimination style format that they have now. So I guess that's the one thing I'd like to see brought back. In terms of what was the second part of the question? I guess what we're doing.
Something you don't want to see again.
Something I don't want to see again. Man, I don't know. Does it have to be like a one-time thing that we've seen in recent years?
It could be anything, bud.
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot here. It's
yeah. Yeah.
I guess there's been some races that I don't think have been handled very well by race control, and I think it comes back to the phrase consistently inconsistent. I think people have called race control that over the years, and I think you saw it just last night or not last night, I guess 2 nights ago with the Cup race in Nashville. Brad Keselowski was practically stopped on the backstretch and limping around for 3 laps, but I think everybody in the tower just wanted to go home. We'd had a long rain delay, and if that happens any other lap or any other point in the race, I think that's an automatic caution fairly quickly. But there's just it seems to me like there are arbitrary decisions that are made by race control. The yellow line rule is another one that comes to mind here. We've seen some drivers be able to get away with that. Other times it's said that somebody was forced below the line when it's kind of ambiguous there. So I think just more consistency from race control is something that I would like to see. So the inconsistency, I guess, to answer the question, is something that frustrates me and I would not want to see going forward. I think race control needs to get a little bit better at that.
What's your favorite series to watch out of all the, is it the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, Truck Series, IndyCar, F1, IMSA?
Right now, it's probably a toss up between Indy and F1, and I have to say I like IndyCar because I think it's almost like a nice blend of the two. You have open wheel race cars, but you have a mix of your ovals and road and street courses and everything, and you have a very diverse field as well. Talent coming from all over the world. I don't think IndyCar has been managed as well, really, since the split. So you're going back 25, almost 30 years now to go back that far. And I do think the sport is on a bit of an uptrend. I like what Roger Penske has done. A short time that he's had control of the speedway in the series. I think there's certainly still a lot more work to be done. I think there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from what Formula One has done that's contributed to their boom as well. But I love the storylines that we have in F1 right now. Of course, last season was an epic season with the battle between Hamilton and Verstappen for the title. And this year, I feel like it would be an epic battle as well if Ferrari could get their reliability in order. So I think that there are a lot of reasons for F1's recent boom here. I think the sport has been promoted very well, and I think it's been managed. It's by no means perfect, but it's also been managed a little bit better than IndyCar. So I'd probably lean F1 at this point, but IndyCar is definitely up there as well. And I guess to give you an answer on the stock car side of things, it would probably be the ARCA Menard Series West. I think there's a lot of great storylines in the West Series, and I have a lot of friends out on the West Coast that are fully immersed in that world, so I really enjoy following them.
Yeah, ARCA West is, and obviously they're racing this weekend at Irwindale. So
That's right.
what do you think? Because let me ask you this: I know we take the ARCA preview show, I believe, sometime later this week. Of course, that's the show I do with ARCA PR director Charlie Crawl where I ask him about what's going on with ARCA right now. So the biggest storyline this year, I think, in ARCA West is that the Sunrise cars, the team that didn't win last year, is winning. And BMR, the team that won a lot last year, is not winning this year. I know BMR switched manufacturers with Toyota and Chevrolet. I don't know if that, and obviously, when you basically go from totally different running a different manufacturer, there's obviously growing pains with that. But it's just been the Sunrise team has just been dominating. Of course, when Jake Drew won at Portland, it's like it's not a question of if he will win, it's when he will win, and then obviously it's been off. And then Tanner Reif gets out of the car and takes the steering wheel off, and haven't seen a guy celebrate like he did. But what do you think about this season in ARCA West?
Well, I think you hit the nail right on the head there. I think BMR has maybe been slowed down a little bit by that manufacturer change. I think you saw the same thing. The last prominent switch that I can think of was when Stuart Haas went from Chevy to Ford in the Cup Series, and their 2017 season was, relative. I know Kurt Busch started it off as well as he could by winning Daytona, but even then Harvick only got 2 wins that year, I think, and Clint Bowyer, Danny Kirkpatrick didn't win any. So I think it was a time of growing pains for them, to pick up where they had left off in 2016, and then of course Harvick had a great 2018 season. So BMR, have been a team that's been so dominant in the West Series. Like I said, they've won the last 3 championships. I think you have to go back to 18 when Derek Thorne won it. That's the last time Sunrise was able to get up there. So I have no doubt that they'll be able to bounce back eventually. But I think, unfortunately, we're not going to get a repeat of that epic championship battle we had last year at Phoenix. I think this is certainly Jake Drew starting to run away with it this year. And, he's going to be a well-deserved champion if he can maintain this pace, because obviously, the heartbreak of coming up just short last year, I know still has to be motivating him to continue to push on. And, it's great to see him get the wins at Portland and Sonoma when I was out there. And he's going to be a worthy champion, assuming that he can keep this pace, which I think he'll be able to do.
And if you've watched my channel, Jake's appeared on here a lot, and obviously really, really good kid. He's got an interesting personality, so it's a good kid to get to know. It really, in terms of how much NASCAR do you watch? Like, do you watch a lot of it? Or I know you got a day job and all the things out there, but how often do you tune into these races?
I try to watch as much as I can. I have the Flow Racing subscription, so I can watch all the ARCA stuff and even some of the modifieds at times. The main podcast I'm doing now for Grid is called Grid Live Encore. So we cover, the lower series and lower divisions on that podcast. So not just the NASCAR stuff, but also Indy Lights and Formula 2 and Formula 3. Joe has this thing called the grid ranking where he tries to rank drivers and competitors across all series by one different metric system. I'm not even sure, all the metrics that he uses there. You'd have to ask him, but he only does the Cup Series for that because the Cup Series is the top level of NASCAR racing. So, I was doing the podcast with Grid last year, and the idea came up in the off season that we could add a show that put a little bit of spotlight on Xfinity trucks and ARCA and everything. So, in light of that, I guess to draw it back and answer your question here, I do try to watch as many of those races as I can because it's what my entire podcast is based around. And then obviously, I try to catch as many Cup races as I can as well. So I wouldn't say, but by no means do I watch every single lap of every single race every single year. I'm sure I probably tried to when I was a kid, but it's definitely something that I'm passionate about. And despite the flaws that I continue to see in the sport, I think it's still something that I enjoy, and ultimately at the end of the day, we're all race fans, and I wish we could do a little bit better job of putting our differences aside and just sitting down and enjoying a race together sometimes. But yeah, I try to catch as much as I can still.
Yeah, and you mentioned that a little bit. I know you've obviously, as if you may well aware, I mean, just overall the country, just things in general with things are difficult all the time. How do you manage all that? Because, when you're on social media, you see everything good and bad. Sometimes you need a break. Sometimes I definitely need one. How do you manage all that from trying to interact with people and then just like, I don't want to read this again.
It's tough, man. I mean, it really is. I just tweeted earlier today, I went back and found a tweet from a month ago where I'm just like, it's so hard to keep going, because you see, obviously there's the news that broke this morning that a podcast comment from Nelson Piquet resurfaced regarding some things he said about Lewis Hamilton. And, obviously that's terrible and shouldn't be condoned at all. But I think, that you see so many fans get bothered by that. And, I think it really allows for some personal attacks between the Hamilton fans and Verstappen fans who are going after each other. Because of course, Max dates Kelly Piquet, who's Nelson's daughter. And, this is just one example of many, but to see that fighting back and forth on social media from, fans, it doesn't help the situation at all, in my opinion. And, it's tough to see things like that. And then of course you have, it's been a rough couple of years for everybody with the pandemic and, all sorts of other things. So, I can't complain too much. I was telling you right before I came on the show here that, life's pretty good for me right now, but I know for a lot of people it isn't. So, it's kind of difficult at times to keep the faith. But, I think the thing with social media is I have a very love-hate relationship with it because, if it weren't for Twitter, I don't think I'd be doing either my writing for Brock through Lascar or my podcast with Grid. Because I built the connections through, you follow somebody for so long on social media and then they follow you back and you build a connection here and someone who knows someone and it all evolves and that's all great. But at the same time, the place can get so toxic when you see people going back and forth. And I think that's a real shame. And I think, if it weren't for my career path and what I wanted to do in communications and in media, I'd probably be on social media quite a bit less. I wouldn't say, for sure, but I wouldn't be on it at all. But it would be much easier for me to step away for different periods of time and take a break and not let it consume me. And I think, it's about finding that balance between using it for good, but not letting it overpower you and frustrate you.
You talk about the lower series. This popped in my head. Do you follow like Indy Pro 2000 and USF 2000, the two lower series below Indy Lights?
Not as much. To be honest, I didn't even follow Indy Lights that closely until just this year with what I wanted to do with the show. I'm glad Peacock is broadcasting all the lights races now and everything, but I'd always watch the Freedom 100 every year. It's a shame that race is kind of on the back burner for right now. I hope that they bring it back eventually, but in terms of USF 2000 or other parts of the Road to Indy feeder series there, I try to catch highlights when I can and stories that break in there. Actually, you want to talk about West Series connection. That's where Jagger Jones is racing right now. I know he had a very good West season in 2019. So, try to follow his races and career a little bit there, but I must admit I don't follow it as closely as I do lights or obviously the main IndyCar series.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously I've followed it for years, and as you know, we've had a lot of their drivers on the channel.
Sure.
With grateful to all the teams and to my friends at Anderson Promotions. Of course, Dan and his team also promote the USF Juniors, which I'll see in a few weeks when I go to Mid Ohio. There's some fun drivers down there, so it's good to see. But let's talk about who has overall impressed you, like really in all the series that you follow, and then who's been kind of like, oh.
Who's impressed me, I think, has to be Trackhouse. I think a lot of people weren't expecting, them to be as strong as they've been this year, to have 3 wins with their 2 different teams. And, just coming off of the purchase of Chip Ganassi, I think Justin Marks, if he keeps this up, I've said this on Twitter before, I think he's a future Hall of Famer. If he can stay in the sport long enough and do what he's been doing so far with the Trackhouse team, bringing in a co-owner like Pitbull, I think that's great for the health of the sport in general, to put some more eyes on his team and everything. And, obviously this Project 91 car, but he's going to enter at Watkins Glen with Kimi Räikkönen, and who knows where that's going to go. Marks has just been such a visionary in terms of what he's wanted to do with his team. And he's accomplished a lot of great things in just a year and a half. And I'm excited to see what he can do as well. Obviously, he has 2 great drivers in Ross Chastain and Daniel Suarez. So, I've been very impressed with what he's been able to do in such a short amount of time. In terms of who hasn't impressed me or who I think has fallen a little short, I'd maybe go over to Formula One here. And, they've set such a high standard for themselves over the last several years. But the Mercedes F1 team, I hesitate to even say that they're struggling, because there's 7 teams on the grid that would love to have the results that they're having right now. But, when you come off of 8 consecutive constructors championships and you follow the 3rd in just a year here, it's certainly not the season that Mercedes or Lewis Hamilton or George Russell would have wanted so far. I'm confident that they can, if anybody can recover from this and bring some upgrades and be fighting for wins by the end of the season, it would certainly be a team like them. But I think any F1 fan will tell you, we expected maybe a 3-way battle between Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari for the title this year, and it's definitely only a 2-way battle at this point, and maybe even Red Bulls to lose if, like I said, Ferrari can't get their reliability back in order. Mercedes certainly, I think, are too far back to be making a run at a championship this year. And obviously you can't win them all, but given the standard that Mercedes have set for themselves the last several seasons, I think they've been pretty disappointing.
Absolutely. And before I leave you, what are some of the things you're looking forward to this coming year, really in all of motorsports? Give me one key thing couple things that you're gonna, I don't know. Let me word this correctly here. What are you expecting? Give me some predictions that we'll see at the end of the year, you think?
I think Kimi's going to surprise a lot of people when he gets to Watkins Glen. I think people, it's been over a decade now since he was in a stock car, but he's a very talented race car driver. Any F1 fan will be able to tell you that. I think he's going to have a really good opportunity. I don't think he's going to win, but I think he could certainly punch above his weight and deliver a very solid result for that Project 91 car. So I'm very excited to see what he can do and how that's going to go. So that's probably what I'm most looking forward to on the NASCAR side of things. In terms of anything else, I think, if I had to make a prediction right now, I think Red Bull are probably in the driver's seat for the F1 side of things. Like I said, I think Ferrari, I've compared them to like Stephen A. Smith talking about the Dallas Cowboys. It's just like an accident waiting to happen and they can't get out of their own way. What can go wrong will go wrong. And, it just seems like they are very prone to making mistakes and, not having reliability or strategy in order. So I think Red Bull are sitting pretty right now. And then I guess if I had to go back on the west side of things, like I mentioned, I think Jake True is in a very good position at this point. It's hard to see anybody else catching up and taking the championship from him, which I think will be well-deserved because, like I said, he lost in the most heartbreaking circumstances last year. So, now that he's finally got that win and wins now, plural, with backing it up at Sonoma. I think he's kind of set sail on that side of things too.
All right. All right, Ben, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us. And we'll have you on again sometime later in the year. How about that?
Yeah, we definitely have to talk about game shows. And I know you're a Greed fan as well. Like I am.
Yes.
So
Yes.
we'll have to get back together soon.
Yeah, for sure.